Alex Reeves finished his shift at 1:47 hours, station time. 16 hours of managing crises, trade disputes, malfunctioning environmental systems, a near breach in Sector 12. His body ached with exhaustion as he performed his standard security check. Door locks, functional. Internal sensors, clear. Everything secure and empty. He should have noticed the anomaly in the air filtration readings, should have caught the microscopic fluctuation in the door's biometric log. But fatigue made him sloppy, and he fell asleep within minutes of hitting the bed. The warmth came first, a gentle pressure against his side that his sleeping mind initially dismissed as a dream. Then breathing, soft, rhythmic, definitely real. Alex's eyes snapped open, his security training kicking in even through the fog of sleep. A woman lay curled against him, her face turned toward his chest, dark hair spilling across his pillow. The bioluminescent patterns tracing her exposed collarbone pulsed faintly with each breath. Velthrani. High caste, judging by the intricate formal robes that probably cost more than his annual salary. She was beautiful. That thought struck him with inconvenient force before panic could fully set in. Alex's hand moved instinctively toward the emergency alert on his wrist, but something made him pause. Her expression was peaceful, vulnerable in a way that seemed at odds with the massive security breach she represented. And there was something else. Small crystalline devices mounted on his walls, glowing softly with active recording status. His heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't just wrong. This was catastrophically, career-endingly wrong. He began extracting himself with careful precision, but the woman stirred at his movement. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that shifted from deep violet to startled amber. She looked at him, at their entangled position, at the recording devices broadcasting God's knew what to God's knew where. The colors in her eyes cascaded through shock, fear, and then settled into something that looked like grim resignation. "Oh no," she whispered, in perfect standard, her accent marking educated nobility. "This is significantly more complicated than I planned." Before Alex could demand an explanation, his door chimed with emergency override authorization. Commander Yates's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Lieutenant Commander Reeves, open this door immediately. We have a Code 7 diplomatic situation." Alex had never heard of a Code 7, but the tremor of barely controlled fury in Yates's voice told him everything he needed to know. He looked at the woman, still in his bed, still close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "I'm guessing," he said carefully, "that I should know who you are." Her chin lifted with practiced royal bearing despite the circumstances. "I'm Princess Kira Velthrani, fourth heir to the Velthrani ascendancy." She paused, and the bioluminescent patterns on her skin flickered nervously. "And you are, accidentally and problematically, my bonded consort witness under the sanctuary law. Those sensors have recorded our intimacy and transmitted it to both our governments." The word intimacy hung in the air between them, charged with implications Alex didn't fully understand. "We were sleeping," he said, "fully clothed. Nothing happened." "Under Velthrani law," Kira replied softly, "sleeping in another's embrace is the highest form of intimacy. It implies trust, vulnerability, chosen partnership. The sanctuary bond recognizes such intimacy as a declaration of mutual commitment." The door chimed again, more insistent. Through the comm he could hear multiple voices, human and Velthrani, all talking over each other with barely contained chaos. "You should probably let them in," Kira said, "before they override the door entirely." Alex authorized entry, and his quarters exploded with bodies. Commander Yates led the charge, flanked by security teams and Velthrani diplomatic representatives whose formal robes seemed to fill every available space. The fury on Yates's face could have melted hull plating. She took in the scene with a single sweeping glance. Princess Kira on Alex's bed, the recording sensors, Alex standing there in sleep clothes looking like he'd been ambushed by reality itself. "Lieutenant Commander," Yates said with dangerous calm, "explain how a Velthrani princess ended up in your quarters." "I genuinely have no idea, ma'am. I went to sleep alone after my shift," When I woke up, she was there. A Velthrani official stepped forward, his ceremonial tattoos marking him as high diplomatic rank. The sanctuary bond has been triggered. Princess Kira Velthrani was recorded in intimate repose with this human male. Under our law, such intimacy creates a consort witness bond that must be formally acknowledged. Intimate repose? Alex's voice rose despite his attempted control. We were sleeping. Lieutenant Commander, the official replied coldly. In Velthrani culture, to sleep in another's presence, to make oneself vulnerable in their protection, is to declare trust that transcends all other bonds. Your casual attitude towards such intimacy only demonstrates how little humans understand. Kira stood then, pulling her robes around herself with fluid grace. Even disheveled from sleep, she commanded attention. I came here seeking refuge. The sanctuary bond was triggered faster than I anticipated, but it cannot be dismissed under our law. Your Highness, the Velthrani official said sharply, you will return to secure diplomatic quarters immediately while this situation is investigated. And you, Lieutenant Commander, Yates added with equal sharpness, are confined to quarters pending emergency briefing about whatever diplomatic disaster you've stumbled into. As security moved to escort them to separate locations, Alex's eyes met Kira's across the chaos. Her expression held an apology she couldn't voice aloud, a plea for understanding, and something else, a flicker of fear that made his chest tighten despite everything. Then she was gone, surrounded by guards, and Alex was left standing in his quarters trying to understand how his life had just been irrevocably altered by a woman who'd broken in while he slept. Part 2. The Impossible Choice. The briefing room felt too small for the weight of information being delivered. Commander Yates and Ambassador Chen sat across from Alex, their expressions grim. The sanctuary bond, Chen began, pulling up historical files, is ancient Velthrani tradition designed to protect royalty who seek refuge with chosen guardians. When a royal enters intimate repose with someone, that person becomes their consort witness, granted authority to protect them and legal standing in Velthrani society. It's meant to be chosen deliberately, Yates continued. Princess Kira claims she sought refuge in your quarters for unspecified security reasons. Her rivals claim it's a calculated political move to gain a human ally in succession disputes that have been escalating for months. Alex's exhaustion was giving way to a growing sense of dread. What succession disputes? Chen's expression darkened. Princess Kira is fourth heir, but the three ahead of her have been systematically discredited, eliminated, or removed from succession over the past 2 years. She's effectively next in line if she survives long enough to claim it. The words hung heavy in the recycled air of the briefing room. The sanctuary bond with a human consort witness complicates assassination attempts, Yates added. Harming you would violate sacred law and trigger automatic investigation by both governments. Some analysts think she's brilliant, using ancient law to create protection neither government can easily dismiss. Others think she's desperate and made a tactical error that will backfire spectacularly. Can I refuse the bond? Alex asked, though he already suspected the answer. You can publicly deny it, Yates said carefully, which would shame her politically and void your obligations under Velthrani law. It would also remove whatever protection she gained by triggering it, likely making her vulnerable to the factions trying to eliminate her. So I can refuse and probably get her killed, or accept and become part of alien succession politics I don't understand? Alex leaned back in his chair. Those are my options? That's an excellent assessment of your impossible situation, Chen said. You have 48 hours to decide before both governments demand formal resolution. In the meantime, you're granted permission to meet with Princess Kira privately to discuss terms. The diplomatic quarters were beautiful and oppressive in equal measure. Luxurious furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gas giant, and guards from both species monitoring every entrance. A comfortable prison. Kira stood at the window when Alex entered, her silhouette backlit by the swirling amber clouds of the planet below. She turned at the sound of the door, and her eyes shifted through colors his database couldn't fully interpret. "I owe you an explanation," she said before he could speak. "That would be appreciated." She moved away from the window, her formal robes whispering against the floor. The sanctuary bond wasn't a calculated political move, though I understand why everyone thinks it was. I was running out of options, and your quarters were the only place I could think of where I might be safe for even a few hours. Alex watched her carefully, using every interrogation technique he'd learned, reading body language, listening for inconsistencies. But there was something raw in her voice that rang true. "Fourth heir to the Velthrani ascendancy," she continued, "watched constantly by noble factions who've systematically eliminated everyone ahead of me in succession. 3 siblings dead or discredited. I'm next unless I find protection that transcends traditional noble alliances. Why me? Why my quarters? The sanctuary bond is ancient law that supersedes noble politics. If I could trigger it with someone outside the factions, someone who doesn't have an agenda in our succession disputes, I'd gain protection my enemies couldn't easily eliminate." She met his eyes directly. "Your quarters were neutral territory, on a station where most spaces are compromised. And you have a reputation, Lieutenant Commander. Everyone here knows you can't be bribed or intimidated. So you did plan this." "I planned to seek temporary sanctuary in a secure location. I didn't plan to fall asleep." Her bioluminescent patterns flickered with what looked like embarrassment. That was exhaustion overriding intention. "But I won't lie and say this wasn't calculated. I needed protection. You represented the safest option available." The honesty was somehow more disturbing than a lie would have been. At least a lie he could reject cleanly. "Why didn't you just ask for political asylum?" Alex asked. "Station Kepler 9 has formal protocols." "Which my enemies control. Every official channel is compromised by factions who want me eliminated. The sanctuary bond was the only law ancient enough and sacred enough that they couldn't simply ignore it through political maneuvering." She paused, studying his face. "But I won't force you to accept it. If you refuse, I'll face the consequences. You didn't ask for this, and you shouldn't be obligated to risk your career and safety for alien succession politics you have no stake in." "What happens if you face those consequences?" Kira's smile was sad. "Based on current threat assessments, I have approximately a week before the next assassination attempt succeeds, maybe less." The casual way she said it, like discussing weather patterns rather than her own death, sent a chill down Alex's spine. "I need to think," he said finally. "Of course, you have 48 hours." She turned back to the window, effectively dismissing him. But as he reached the door, she spoke again without turning. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant Commander, I truly am sorry. You didn't deserve to be pulled into this." "Neither did you," Alex replied, surprising himself. "Deserve to be hunted by your own people." Her shoulders tensed slightly, the only indication she'd heard him. Then he was gone, leaving her silhouetted against the gas giant, alone in her gilded cage. Alex spent the next 2 days doing what he did best, investigating. Station security footage showed Princess Kira entering his quarters using override codes she shouldn't have possessed. She came alone, moving with the practiced stealth of someone trained in far more than courtly politics. She entered while he slept, stood beside his bed for nearly 3 minutes. He could see her hesitation in the footage, the way her hand reached toward him and pulled back twice before she finally lay down beside him. She sat in torrentially remotely by her security detail approximately 30 minutes later, after she'd already fallen asleep curled against him. He found more in the communication logs. Noble factions coordinating against her. 3 suspicious deaths in her family over 2 years. Her eldest brother in a shuttle accident, her sister from sudden illness, another brother discredited by fabricated evidence of treason. Intelligence suggesting assassination attempts were being actively planned. She wasn't exaggerating the danger. But he discovered something else that made his blood run cold. The station's previous security chief, the one Alex had replaced 18 months ago, had been secretly reporting to Velthrani nobles opposed to Kira's succession. His quarters were one of the few locations on the station that weren't compromised by surveillance from her enemies. She chose you because you're literally the only person on this station she could trust, his colleague Martinez observed, reviewing the same evidence. Your reputation for integrity, your lack of connection to Velthrani politics, your quarters being one of the few truly secure locations. It was calculated, but the calculation was about survival, not political manipulation. Alex sat in the dim light of his security office, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy that stretched back years. And somewhere in the diplomatic quarters, a woman waited to learn if he'd condemn her to death for the crime of seeking safety. Their second private meeting felt different. The diplomatic performance had fallen away, leaving something more real and infinitely more complicated. "I've reviewed the evidence," Alex said without preamble. "The assassination attempts, the conspiracy, the surveillance. You weren't exaggerating." Kira's eyes shifted to a color he was starting to recognize as hope mixed with caution. "Does that mean—" "It means I have questions. What happens if I accept, beyond the immediate protection?" She settled into a chair across from him, her formal bearing softening slightly. "You become my consort witness under Velthrani law. You gain authority to protect me, legal standing in succession disputes, access to intelligence and resources that might help keep both of us alive." She paused. "You also gain a target on your back from everyone who wants me dead. And if I refuse? Then I lose the protection the bond provides. My life expectancy drops to approximately a week. You return to your security work, and eventually, you file reports about a Velthrani princess who died under mysterious circumstances on your watch." The brutal honesty was becoming a pattern with her. No diplomatic evasion, no political maneuvering, just raw truth laid between them like a challenge. "I need to understand something," Alex said, leaning forward. "That first night, when you stood beside my bed before lying down, the footage shows you hesitating. What were you thinking?" Kira's bioluminescent patterns flickered with what looked like embarrassment. "I was thinking that I was about to irrevocably alter your life without your permission. That it was a terrible thing to do, even if survival necessitated it." She met his eyes. "And I was thinking that you looked peaceful. That it had been a very long time since I'd felt safe enough to sleep peacefully." Something in Alex's chest tightened at the admission. "When you fell asleep, did you mean to curl up against me like that?" "No." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "That was instinct. Your body heat, the feeling of safety in your quarters. I hadn't felt truly safe in months. My body responded before my mind could maintain proper diplomatic distance." "Diplomatic distance," Alex repeated. "Is that what we're supposed to have?" "It's what would be appropriate for a consort witness bond triggered for political protection." Kira's eyes shifted through colors he was learning to read. Uncertainty, hope, fear. "But I suspect we passed appropriate the moment I broke into your quarters." Alex found himself standing, moving closer without conscious decision. "You said sleeping in someone's presence is the highest form of intimacy in your culture. Explain that."
To sleep is to be vulnerable, unconscious, defenseless, trusting that the person beside you won't harm you while you can't protect yourself. Her voice had gone soft, almost hypnotic. In ancient times, Velthrani warriors would sleep beside their chosen mates to demonstrate absolute trust, to say, "I place my life in your hands," without words. "But you didn't choose me. You calculated that I was your safest option. I calculated that you were honorable, trustworthy, outside the political factions trying to kill me." Kira stood as well, closing the distance between them. "What I didn't calculate was how it would feel. Waking up beside you, feeling safe for the first time in months, seeing the recording sensors and knowing I'd just complicated both our lives beyond repair." They were close now, close enough that Alex could see the intricate patterns of bioluminescence shifting across her skin with each emotion. "And now?" he asked. "How does it feel now?" Terrifying, she admitted, because I told myself this was purely survival strategy, and somewhere between breaking into your quarters and this moment, it became something I can't classify with neat political terms. Alex's training said this was manipulation. His instincts said it was truth. His heart? Gods, when had his heart gotten involved? Said he was already past the point of walking away cleanly. "The assassination attempt is coming soon," he said finally. "You can feel it, can't you?" Kira's eyes widened slightly. "How did you—" "Because I can feel it too. I've been doing security work long enough to recognize the patterns. They're coordinating something, probably targeting both of us simultaneously to look like an accident." "Then you've made your decision." It wasn't a question. "I made my decision when I reviewed the evidence and realized you chose my quarters because they were the only safe place left on this entire station. Because you were terrified and exhausted and out of options." Alex reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed his fingers against her hand. Her skin was warm, the bioluminescent patterns flaring briefly at the contact. "I'm accepting the bond, Kira. Not because of politics or strategy, but because refusing feels like abandoning someone who sought sanctuary, and that's not something I can live with." The colors cascading through her eyes were complex, layered, relief, and something that looked dangerously like affection. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank me after we survive whatever's coming." Her fingers laced through his, grip tightening. "Then we should prepare. Together." The attack came on the fourth day, precise and coordinated. Alex was investigating a reported security breach in Section 7 when his personal sensors detected environmental anomalies. Someone was systematically sabotaging the oxygen regulation system, making it look like a routine malfunction that would kill him through deprivation before anyone noticed. At the exact same moment, according to later reports, Princess Kira's quarters were breached by intruders who somehow bypassed both human and Velthrani security protocols. They survived only because Alex's paranoid security measures detected the sabotage 30 seconds before it became critical, and because Kira's training in defensive tactics was significantly better than her attackers anticipated. She disabled 2 assassins before her guards could respond, moving with lethal grace that suggested her royal education included more than diplomatic etiquette. Alex made it to her quarters still breathing hard from emergency decompression protocols to find Kira standing over unconscious attackers with a blade in her hand and bioluminescent patterns blazing with adrenaline. Their eyes met across the chaos, and something fundamental shifted. "You're alive," they said simultaneously. Then Alex was moving, crossing the space between them, and Kira was dropping the blade to meet him halfway. When they collided, it wasn't gentle or romantic, it was desperate and real. 2 people who just survived coordinated assassination attempts and needed to confirm the other was solid and breathing and alive. "They tried to kill you," Kira said against his shoulder, her voice shaking with fury and fear. "They tried to make it look like an accident." "They tried to kill you too." Alex's hands were in her hair, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. "Are you hurt?" "Minor cuts, nothing serious." Her fingers gripped his uniform jacket with desperate strength. "You?" "I'm fine. We're both fine." He leaned his forehead against hers, breathing her in. "But they're going to try again." "Then we find them first." Her eyes blazed with colors that looked like determination mixed with violence. "And we end this." The investigation revealed what they'd both suspected: coordination between Velthrani nobles and human officials who wanted the sanctuary bond dissolved before it could complicate their careful management of interstellar politics. But it was bigger than succession disputes. Alex and Kira compiled evidence showing years of coordination between factions on both sides to maintain what they called managed tension. Not quite war, not quite peace, but profitable, controlled conflict that benefited certain groups while keeping their species locked in perpetual low-grade hostility. Princess Kira's succession threatened that arrangement because she advocated for genuine cooperation. The sanctuary bond threatened it even more. It created a relationship both governments had to acknowledge that symbolized exactly the kind of cross-species partnership the conspirators had been working to prevent. "They're not trying to kill me just because I'm heir," Kira explained as they reviewed communication logs in Alex's security office, working late into station night cycle. "They're trying to kill me because I'm an heir who wants actual peace." Alex looked at years of coordinated sabotage documented in the logs. "So accepting the sanctuary bond isn't just about protecting you, it's about taking sides against people invested in maintaining conflict between our species." "Yes," Kira turned to face him directly. "Which is why I'll understand if you refuse even now. This isn't just personal risk, it's a political stance against powerful forces who've profited from the status quo for decades." "Kira," Alex reached across the desk, taking her hand. "I made my decision. I'm not changing it because the conspiracy is bigger than we thought." "Even knowing that everyone invested in the current system will target you?" "Even knowing that." He squeezed her fingers gently. "Besides, I'm security. Taking down conspiracy rings is literally in my job description." She laughed, a sound he was learning to treasure because it was rare and genuine. "Your job description did not include alien succession politics and interstellar conspiracies." "Then I'm overachieving. I should get a raise." Kira's expression softened, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsing with warmth. "You make jokes when you're afraid. And you deflect with political analysis when you're feeling emotional. We both have coping mechanisms." She stood, moving around the desk until she was close enough that he could feel her warmth. "Alex Reeves, I need you to understand something. When I triggered the sanctuary bond, I told myself it was pure survival strategy. But somewhere between that first morning and this moment, it became," she hesitated, searching for words. "It became something I can't quantify in political terms." Alex stood as well, closing the remaining distance between them. "What terms would you use?" "Personal ones." Her voice had gone quiet, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with Velthrani law. "Dangerous ones, given our circumstances." "Dangerous how?" "Because caring about you beyond strategic necessity makes me vulnerable in ways my enemies can exploit. Because when they tried to kill you, I wasn't thinking about political implications. I was thinking that I couldn't lose you before we'd even begun." Her eyes shifted through complex colors. "Because I'm falling for my own consort witness, and that's significantly more complicated than political protection." Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. "Kira." "Don't." She pressed her fingers against his lips, silencing him. "Don't say anything unless you mean it. Don't comfort me or respond out of obligation from the bond. If this is just protection and political necessity for you, I'll accept that. But don't offer me false hope." He caught her wrist gently, moving her hand away so he could speak. "Do you remember what you said about sleeping in someone's presence? About trust and vulnerability?" "Yes. I've slept beside you 3 times since that first morning. Each time we reviewed evidence late into the night cycle and fell asleep in your quarters or mine." He watched her eyes widen as she understood. "Each time, I chose to stay, chose to sleep in your presence when I could have left." "That's... Alex, in my culture, that's a declaration, to repeatedly choose intimate repose." "I know what it means." He cupped her face in his hands, watching the bioluminescent patterns blaze with emotion. "I looked it up, studied your cultural databases. I know that in Velfredi tradition, a consort witness who repeatedly chooses to sleep beside their bonded partner is declaring that the bond has become more than duty." Kira's breath caught. "Then, you?" "I'm falling for you too," he said simply. "And yes, it's significantly more complicated than protection and political necessity. But uncomplicated stopped being an option the moment you broke into my quarters." When she kissed him, it was nothing like he'd imagined. It was fierce and desperate and real. 2 people who'd survived assassination attempts and were fighting conspiracies and had found something precious in the middle of chaos. Her bioluminescent patterns blazed against his skin where they touched, warm and alive and absolutely right. "We're going to survive this," Alex said against her lips. "We're going to expose the conspiracy, secure your succession, and build the peace you've been fighting for." That's an ambitious plan. You broke into a security officer's quarters and accidentally triggered ancient sacred law. Ambitious seems to be your specialty. She laughed, and the sound was like light breaking through darkness. "Our specialty now. You're stuck with me, Lieutenant Commander." "Crown Princess," he corrected, because they both knew where this was heading. "You're going to ascend, and I'm going to be right there beside you. As my consort witness. As your partner," Alex said firmly, "in every sense that matters." The ceremony happened under full diplomatic observation from both governments. Alex swore protection, acknowledged intimacy, trust demonstrated through vulnerable sleep, and committed to partnership. He did it in formal dress uniform, standing before representatives from both species, with Kira beside him in full royal regalia. But what mattered wasn't the ceremony. It was the moment afterward, when they were finally alone in Kira's chambers, formal obligations complete. "How do you feel?" Kira asked, her fingers working at removing elaborate ceremonial jewelry. "Like I just formally committed myself to alien succession politics, interstellar conspiracies, and a woman who broke into my quarters." Alex moved to help her with a clasp she couldn't reach. "Terrified and absolutely certain I made the right choice." She turned in his arms, bioluminescent patterns pulsing with warmth. "The terrified part or the certain part?" "Both, simultaneously." Kira smiled, reaching up to trace patterns on his face that probably meant something significant in her culture. "I'm terrified too. Falling for you wasn't part of the survival strategy." "Should we have a strategy meeting about it?" "Definitely." She pulled him toward the bed, the same formal sleeping area where they'd reviewed evidence dozens of times. "I think we need to discuss the implications of consort witness partnerships at length." Alex recognized the teasing in her voice, the way her eyes shifted with affection and desire and trust. "Very thorough discussion?" "Extremely thorough." She pulled him down beside her, and they lay facing each other in the dim light. "Starting with the fact that I love you." The words hung between them, powerful and simple. "I love you too," Alex replied, watching her bioluminescent patterns blaze with joy. "Which is probably terrible timing given everything we're dealing with." "Terrible timing," she agreed. "But I've learned that the best things often begin in impossible circumstances." She moved closer until there was no space between them. "Thank you for choosing honor over convenience, for accepting the bond even when it meant stepping into chaos."
"Thank you for trusting me enough to be vulnerable," Alex said, pressing his forehead to hers. "For choosing my quarters as your sanctuary." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, both choosing vulnerability and trust. Outside the windows, the gas giant swirled with amber light. In the corridors, guards from both species maintained watch. And in the systems connecting their worlds, frameworks for cooperation were slowly taking root. But in that moment, in the quiet darkness of Kira's chambers, the only thing that mattered was the warmth of her against him and the steady rhythm of her breathing. Trust demonstrated through vulnerable sleep. Intimacy that transcended political necessity. The sanctuary bond that began with a desperate princess seeking refuge had become something neither of them expected but both treasured. Partnership built on trust, respect, affection, and love that grew from impossible circumstances.
The Permanent Peace Treaty ceremony was everything both species needed it to be: formal, diplomatic, carefully managed to satisfy political requirements on both sides. Alex stood beside Crown Princess Kira Velthrani, wearing formal dress that combined human military precision with Velthrani ceremonial elements. "We're being credited with ending a conflict neither of us started," Alex observed quietly, watching diplomats from both species actually conversing like colleagues rather than adversaries. "We expose the people maintaining it for profit," Kira corrected, her hand finding his beneath the formal robes. "That's worth crediting. Also, we survived multiple assassination attempts and political conspiracies. That deserves some recognition." A Velthrani noble approached with formal bow. "Your Highness, the Council wishes to discuss succession ceremony protocols regarding the consort witness's participation." "Tell them my consort witness will participate in full capacity as our laws dictate," Kira replied with pleasant firmness that ended debates. "If they have concerns, they should have raised them before I ascended with a bonded human partner." After the noble retreated, Alex smiled. "You enjoy making them uncomfortable." "I enjoy reminding them that our laws apply regardless of their personal preferences." She moved closer, intimate despite the public setting. "Besides, making stuffy nobles uncomfortable is one of the few benefits of royalty." Later, in the privacy of their shared quarters, significantly larger than Alex's original station housing, Kira presented him with a small crystalline device. "What's this?" he asked. "The original recording from that first night, the one that triggered the sanctuary bond." Her eyes shifted with affection. "I had it retrieved from the diplomatic archives." Alex took it carefully, turning it over in his hands. "Why?" "Because it's proof that the most important partnerships sometimes begin with the strangest circumstances." She moved into his arms, fitting against him perfectly. "And because looking at it reminds me how far we've come. From that morning when you woke up confused and I was terrified, to this moment where we're partners in every sense that matters. You still broke into my quarters without permission. And you still fell in love with me anyway." She tilted her face up, eyes blazing with warmth. "I'd say it worked out rather well." "Dangerously well," Alex agreed, lowering his mouth to hers. "Impossibly well." Late that night, after formal celebrations were complete and they could finally rest, Kira curled against Alex the same way she had that first morning. Trusting, vulnerable, and safe. "You're still very warm," she observed sleepily. "Humans make excellent sleeping companions." "That's going in your official biography. Crown Princess Kira Velthrani, reformed succession politics, exposed interstellar conspiracy, appreciates humans for body heat. And has excellent taste in consort witnesses," she added, "obviously." They built something extraordinary from absurd beginnings. And sometimes, in the quiet darkness when formal duties were done, they'd discuss how that first morning, terrifying and chaotic and impossible, had been the beginning of everything that mattered. The sanctuary bond that should have been simple protection became the foundation for transformation. The consort witness who accepted his role because refusing felt dishonorable discovered that sometimes the best decisions were the ones that felt impossible at the time. And the princess who broke into a security officer's quarters seeking safety found something she hadn't planned for. Genuine partnership built on trust, respect, and love that grew from the strangest circumstances imaginable. "I love you," Kira whispered against his chest, half asleep. "I love you too," Alex replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Even though you're a diplomatic incident waiting to happen." "Your diplomatic incident." "My diplomatic incident," he agreed. And in the warmth of their shared quarters, surrounded by the frameworks they'd built for peace between their peoples, they fell asleep in each other's arms, choosing vulnerability, demonstrating trust, and living the intimacy that had started everything. Two people who found safety in each other and built a future from impossible beginnings.